Hi everyone, this is Alejandra Phoenix Ayala here with the summary of yesterday's first episode of Boxeo al Dia. As you guys know, this show is in Spanish, so here's the summary in English. We start off with the bouts of this past weekend. On Friday the 1st, we had Mayweather Promotions with Ava Knight. We see her returning to the boxing ring shortly after having won her first debut fight in the MMA cage, which she won. Here we see her in a rematch against Luna del Mar Torroba. This time she wins again by unanimous decision in 8 rounds. And she reiterates her wanting to go back to MMA, actually with a date for January 25th. So she's staying active. Good luck to her. With Sanfer in Top Rank, we see in Carson, California, Miguel Berchelt, who fought Jason Sosa from Puerto Rico, this constant Mexico-Puerto Rico fights that attract a lot of attention. So Berchelt, as we know, comes from 2 memorable fights against Mickey Roman and Francisco Vargas. And Sosa, although he does have 3 losses, 2 of them have been against strong fighters, which are Lomachenko and Yuriorkis. So we did expect to see a more fight that was going to last probably longer, but as we know, Berchelt's signature moves, he started with the liver shots, which dropped Sosa in the 2nd round, and he continued these shots until his corner stopped it with 10 seconds to go of the 4th round. So he retains his title for the 6th time. In Manchester, London, we have Katie Taylor and Christina Linardartu, the Medusa. But previously, we had another female fight, which was Terry Harper versus Viviane Obanov. So Harper is from the UK, and Obanov is Brazilian, although she has been living in Switzerland for a while now. Harper wins by unanimous decision. And as soon as she comes down, the promoter, Eddie Hearn, is very happy. He claims in 2020 they're going for another world title, which of course makes Michaela Mayer quite angry because she says she's ranked number 2. How is this possible? Why are they giving this girl who is practically, although she has had 8 fights, has never fought anyone of high level? So here we have this well, she's very angry, and before this, maybe it would be interesting to see a Terry Harper versus Michaela Mayer fight. Who knows? We'll see if that happens in 2020. And of course, now we move on to Katie Taylor, who is a unified champion, as we know, in the 135 pounds. She has all the belts in that division, and so she moves on to the 140 pounds for this title WBO belt against the Medusa. As we know, the Medusa is a very strong fighter. When she won her fight, we could say that Candy White was outboxing her a little bit, but Medusa was throwing the harder punches so hard that she did knock out Candy White pretty harshly, which ended the fight and won her title. Here we see a lot of the same things. She seemed a little frustrated at times because she couldn't find Katie Taylor, who was being very elusive, using her footwork, which we hadn't seen in the past couple fights. Katie Taylor was staying a little bit more. We saw this with Pursoon, actually very controversial because when they came to slugging it out, Pursoon did land the more effective shots, in my opinion. But nonetheless, Katie Taylor comes back. She's very elusive. She doesn't stay. Nonetheless, the Medusa does hit her with a couple of shots, which did swell up Taylor's eye in the beginning rounds, and her corner constantly worked at it to make sure that it didn't close up. The fight ends, and Taylor gets the 140 belt by unanimous decision. So here it was a very good fight. Now we see that Taylor is in the 140. She's looking to probably unify all the belts, which, as we know, Jessica McCaskill has 2 of them. So we will probably see that fight in 2020. It'll be a very interesting fight because, as we know, they fought once before at 135. It was a very good fight. A lot of people liked it. A lot of people thought that it was Taylor's strongest opponent up to that time. So now we see that she moves up to 140. We'll see if she could take McCaskill's power at that weight, and we'll see what happens in 2020. And then, of course, we move on to Las Vegas, where Golden Boy and DAZN had their Canelo Kovalev main fight. But previously to that, we see Evan Holyfield, young Holly, the son of legendary Evander Holyfield, who had his debut at Super Welter at 22 years old. He comes up very aggressive and finishes off his rival in 16 seconds. His rival never really had a chance, and although the stop was controversial by the referee, even the commentators saying that it was a little bit premeditated, the rebel was probably not going to do anything. Although he does come from MMA, he probably can receive a lot of shots. It was not probable that he was going to come back to win it. So I think it was a good stop. It was a good start for Evan Holyfield's career, and we'll see what 2020 comes for him. In that same event, we have a Ryan Garcia against the Romero Duno. We know that Ryan Garcia previously had a fight that came down at the day of the weigh-in. The commission didn't let his rival fight, and so nonetheless he stayed in the gym. He was very diligent about that, and we see a Ryan Garcia knocking out Romero Duno, this guy from the Philippines, that although we can say he's not a world-class boxer, he is a level up, and it was a good fight for Ryan Garcia to see where he stands. He claims that in 2020 there will be harder fights, but he would likely not see the likes of fighters such as Devin Haney in 2020. And his promoter, Oscar Zarella, says, we have time. He's a young kid. He's working hard. He's getting better every day. There's no need to rush it. So we'll see good fights coming up next year, although probably not the stellar fights that we want to see. In that same event, Senicia Estrada versus Marlon Esparza. This combat was coming for a while. There was a lot of trash talking prior to this event. So both girls were ready to get in there and show what they were made of. In an interesting turn of events, I guess you could say, they opted for 3-minute rounds instead of 2-minute rounds that the women have. A lot of fighters and a lot of fans commended this. A lot of female fighters think that this is the route to go in order to be able to access those purses that the males have. That oftentimes that's what they claim. You're fighting 2-minute rounds, we're fighting 3-minute rounds, that's why we get paid more. Which, whatever. But so a lot of people did commend. But front row was WBC President Mauricio Sulaiman, who has reiterated that he does not agree and that his WBC will not sanction 3-minute female rounds because of the sanctity that it has for the female boxers. In various studies, he claims that, various studies claim that the female boxers are more susceptible to dehydration and to concussions that result from this. So he was not very happy. Others were. It was a great fight, which ended with a technical decision that went to the cards and had Estrada up. So Estrada becomes the WBA interim champion. Nonetheless, this will probably become a trilogy, as they both still don't like each other. They both still have a lot to prove, and they think that there's nobody better at this level at 112 pounds, although Senicia has said that she does want to go back to 108 and fight again there. And of course, the main fight, Canelo versus Kovalev. Also interesting enough, DAZN decided to wait for the UFC to start, which opted for almost a 90-minute wait for the people who were there in the ring at the event. Nonetheless, obviously, they didn't leave. They paid a lot of money to be there. A lot of the public, though, was very upset with this decision. A lot of people watching it on TV or on social media were also very upset. Many of them left, although they did come back eventually because, it was the fight to see. Very late on, they start with the three anthems, with the Russian, the Mexican, and the American anthem. People were already anxious, And nonetheless, well, the walk-in occurs, and it starts off slow. You know, it's usual, the round of study. However, 4, 5, 6 rounds into it, it remained the same. We see a Kovalev who was not risking anything, who was just throwing jabs, that eventually got pretty lazy towards the second half of the fight. And we see a Canelo who wasn't really trying to get into the guard, unlike fights that we've seen against, for example, Triple G, where we see, you know, he's a slugger, but he misses, and Canelo comes in, hits to the body, hits hard combinations, and then walks out. We didn't see that. We saw, you know, a very calm Canelo taking one out and, you know, coming back with a counterattack of 1 or 2. So it was a very slow fight until the 11th round, where he does hit him with an uppercut and then a hook to the head, which drops Kovalev, and the referee calls it a KO. Now again, there's a lot of controversy because people are saying, you know, maybe this fight was bought. Why were neither of them risking anything? Why do we see a Canelo that wasn't really putting himself out there? Why do we see a Kovalev that also we know is a hard hitter and didn't do much? Well, like it or not, Canelo is a four division champion now, joining the ranks of Mexican fighters Eric El Terrible Morales, Juan Manuel Marquez, and Jorge El Travieso Arce. And so that's how we ended our recap of the boxing events. As a special guest, we had Irais Hernandez, Irais La Temible Hernandez, who is a professional boxer now, but as an amateur, she won 7 national medals, 5 gold and 2 silver in the categories of 69 and 75 kilograms here in Mexico. She also participated in Copa Independencia in 2012 in the Dominican Republic, where she brought home a silver medal. And as a professional, well, she's had some controversial fights, with a loss by majority decision in November of 2017 against Marisela Cornejo. And then in 2018 against Alejandra La Tigre Jimenez, this WBC heavyweight female champion who has been gradually dropping down in weight. Here they got a draw. And in the same year, 2018, in September, for the belt of the Federation against Emma Kozin, there again is a draw. So she tells us that, how did she get into the sport? Well, she tells us that she was actually a basketball player. She was playing basketball at the university level. When a friend invited her to one of her boxing events, she instantly was drawn to boxing, where she says she immediately entered a boxing gym, and she started training, not with the intention of competing. However, as she progressively got better and she went to a national, that same year she came home with a gold medal, and she said, this is it. 7 years later, she decided to make the jump to the professionalism, where she has had, as I mentioned, some ups and downs, some controversial fights, and maybe her record doesn't reflect everything that she has done, but they keep contracting her because they know that they know what she's made of. So as an amateur, she says that it was a difficult trial for her, especially so many years ago. We're talking about, 9-8 years ago, where first of all, there wasn't a lot of female boxing. Second of all, in that division, there was also not a lot of boxing. And third of all, there was not the aid, not from the government, not at a state level, not at a federal level, for them to do anything really. Her trainer is a Cuban ex-fighter from Cuba, who Coach Duarte, who would recount and tell her, in Cuba we have 3 divisions, we have this, they give us this, we are constantly fighting, even if it's not for medals, we're constantly fighting, with our surrounding countries in order for us to get better every day. And so they have a much higher, I guess you could say, quality of boxing. Whereas in Mexico, we didn't see that up until recently with the new president, Lopez Obrador, who has claimed that boxing is one of the most important sports here in Mexico, and he has gone full throttle with the support, which can be seen now in various events that they are holding now, not only state from state, but they're also going abroad. The national team actually, they just came back from, I believe, Colombia, and they are going to Cuba next year. So we see that change, and hopefully it's for the better. Now, as a professional, she shares some of her frustrations with these experiences that she's had. With Marisela Conejo, she says, she sees the tape over and over again, and she says, I feel like I won. However, she does claim that one of the biggest problems at that time was that she didn't finish her off. She says, I could have finished her off. Now I know that. Unfortunately, at that time, I was still, on the Olympic level, and I wasn't sitting down on my shots. I wasn't going for those power punches, which is something that her and her coach have been working on. And as we can see now in her later fights. With the fight with Emma Kozin, she also says that she was very upset. Everything from the beginning was very upsetting. She says that in the contract, she had to give 74 kilograms, while Emma Kozin was allowed the 76 kilogram limit. As far as the flight, they had, various flights for, 2 days. In order to eventually get to Croatia, where it was also very disorderly. The taxi that they had hired didn't know where the weigh-in was. She was very upset. They had to go down. They were walking. She was dehydrated. And while she finally made it to the event, she did everything. And then she says it was also very disorganized. The doctor seemed very amateur-like. The referee seemed very amateur-like. The doctor, for example, didn't ask her for her pregnancy test, which, even if you're fighting 4 rounds, they ask you for a pregnancy test to make sure that you're not pregnant, obviously, as a female. And this was a 10-round, championship bout. That wasn't a concern, apparently. And then the referee, he was calling some amateur calls that you really don't do in professionalism, and it was all sort of out of whack. She also says that previously to the fight, they wanted her to buy her out. They said to fall down in the 5th round and we'll pay you out. So that was also very upsetting for her, the whole experience. This was the first time around fight with Emma Kozin. The second time around, she really didn't comment on that, but all the reviews say that, Irais won. And as it always is in the internet, you can't find the video of the fight, but you can find commentators. And, well, that's how it ends. She says, nonetheless, despite these, she's very optimistic towards the future. She's not done. She wants to continue in the 76 super middleweight early next year, and then if nothing important materializes, she will come down to middleweight, and sure, why not late in the year, super welterweight, if it's a possibility and if there is money to be made there. So we're looking forward to see what Irais La Temible Hernandez does in 2020 and in the future. And that ends our broadcast of the first episode of Boxeo al Dia. Thank you. I hope you enjoy it, and we'll see you next Sunday. Bye-bye.